Welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by Husky Harry, huggable homos who love film, to dish up a little bit of film review goodness. And do we have a lot of it for you today? We've got two films we're going to be reviewing. We'll be talking both Ghost in the Shell, new live action remake. Actually, real quick, guys, we're going to... I'm hearing some echo from somewhere. I hear my voice.
Let me shut my door just in case it's me, but I don't hear it. So
we'll figure it out. And we'll see if that helps. The joys of doing it live, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, we like doing it live.
I prefer live to just video.
So not live? Yeah. What was it? It's Memorex. It's not live, it's Memorex.
Yeah.
There you go. Oh, goodness. All right. Testing. I still hear it a little
I'm
bit.
here. I'm here.
It might be mine. I'm in a big room. Let me move to a different room.
No. You don't have to change rooms. It's okay. What you could do, if it's manageable, can you turn the headphone volume down a little bit? If it's just coming from the, will you still be able to hear?
Oh, yeah. I think I had it on full blast.
All right. Testing.
Hello.
Testing. I think we're good, guys. All right. Dan, can you still hear us okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Then here we go. Take two. Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by Husky Harry, huggable homos who love film, to dish up some film review goodness in a big steaming pile of awesomeness on your plate. So hope you're hungry, because we got a bunch of it coming your way. We're going to be reviewing not one but two movies this week. We're going to be discussing Ghost in the Shell, the new live action remake of the original anime starring Scarlett Johansson. We'll also be talking Life, the Alien remake, ? Yeah, so I don't know. That's going to be a divisive conversation. So that's coming down the pipeline. But before we get to any of that, let me introduce my fantastic co-hosts. Two men I could not live my life without. Jim Pugliafco, welcome to the show, babe.
Thanks, babe, and welcome to the podcast, everyone.
And Will Lindis, welcome to you as well.
Hey, guys. Hey, listeners. And Brad, Jim, guests, listeners, everyone. I couldn't live my life without you all as well. So, yay. Glad to do this tonight. Yeah.
Let me just make like a heart shape with my hands right now to demonstrate how much I adore you guys. Hey, speaking of people that I adore, we also have a long-time listener and fan of the show on board with us this week to help us review these two films because, guys, two big movies like this, I felt like we needed another super sexy voice. So please welcome to the show, Dan. Hello, Dan.
Hey, guys. How are you tonight? Good to be here for you.
Welcome, Dan.
So good to have you with us. You've been a part of several of our conversations. So we're excited to have you in the mix this week. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be a little bit different being a voice instead of on the text.
For sure. Dan, are you comfortable with your last name out there? I didn't say it because I was like, oh crap, I forgot to ask him. All right. So for our listeners who maybe want to find you on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, what is your last name?
It's McCord, MCCORD. So D McCord 82 on Twitter.
Bam, there it is. So look him up right now, follow him. Hey, I want to give a quick shout out to all of the folks who are watching live right now. Hey guys, glad to have you with us. Just taking a peek in the live chat. We've got sexy voice of the Movie Bears podcast, Chris Lopez. Hey Chris, long time no see. We've also got Austin King. Hey, Austin. JP, good to see you as well. And, of course, Dan is in the chat, too. So, hey, Dan, how's it going?
I was more saying it to them, but that's okay.
We've got quite the Rogues Gallery lined up tonight. This is exciting.
We do. And Austin says we're all adorable. So that's good because I think after the long work days we've all had today, if someone can say we're adorable, we're doing something right, hopefully. So yeah, I think so too.
I want to do something right anyway.
Hey, so I have a bit of housekeeping from last week. Can we take like 30 seconds for that?
Yeah.
Do it.
Keep it up.
You're on the clock.
Last week on the show, we had another super sexy bear, Hadrian, on with us to review Power Rangers. And I was all like, look at this crazy alien morpher thing I found in a rock quarry. Well, the reason I had this piece of shit thing that I hate, it's so terrible, was because the Power Morpher that I ordered that was supposed to be here in time for the show got delayed. Thanks, Amazon. Really appreciate that so much. But it came over the weekend. I had to show it off. Check it out, guys. It even like makes noise and everything. What? Isn't that so much better?
Yeah. How many Power Morphers do you have now?
Well, now I have two Power Morphers. Like I have a great Power Morpher, and then I have a really shitty new movie Power Morpher. And I like the new movie, but it's a terrible design. Anyway, so
Big
plus,
roll.
I mean, come on, take a look.
Okay.
No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, nothing. You got something else. Come on, show.
I was just going to say, Will, I haven't sent this out to you yet, but here's your blue coin. It needs to go in the mail.
Triceratops.
Look how much better this coin is than that one.
Shit.
It has a fucking Triceratops on it. You can see.
Yeah, it doesn't look just like a bad piece of like sour candy or something like that.
Right? I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, is this a melted starburst in some plastic? I don't know. So anyway, I had to throw that out there. Folks are saying hello to you, Dan, in the chat. Apparently you are Mr. Popular in the chat tonight. We can see why, because let me focus the camera on very handsome Dan for a second. Look at all that sexiness in one package.
If I could do a cat call whistle right now, I would. Can we insert that in post and make it sound like I just gave like a really flattering whistle?
I could never. Yes, I can. Will I can, but I could never do those cat call whistles either.
Mm-mm.
I don't know why. Never figured it out.
Normal
I'm lucky
whistles
to
like
do a regular.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say, babe?
Oh, nothing. I'm just saying I can't. I was asking you if you could do it, and then you're already telling that you couldn't.
Yeah, I can't even like normal whistle really. I'm like, okay, I did it there, but
that's way better than mine. Mine's like one of those like top of the like, so that's what I've got. Like I'm not working with anything there.
Like Herbert the pervert whistle.
That was my nickname in college.
Get your fat ass back here. Hey, so we have two big movies to discuss. We are going to get into it, I promise. But before we do that, guys, are you ready for some Movie Bears of the Week action?
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. So we put out the call for submissions over the weekend and today, and we put all of the names into a generator, a random name generator, and it picked out a few of you handsome, sexy, beastie bears to be our Movie Bears of the Week. So let me go ahead and pull up the first of our Movie Bears of the Week. Jim, if you would do me a favor and go ahead and describe what you were seeing. Guys, say hello to Steve from Denver.
Oh, that's Steve. I know Steve from Denver.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah, we've met Steve from Denver. Steve's a sweetie. He's man, I don't. He looks like he's wearing a motorcycle jacket there. See, it's all gone small again, and I can barely see it. But he's got a little smile going and got his full beard goatee thing going. Looks like he's got a nice haircut. I'm glad he sent us a picture. I don't know how long ago he sent this, but yeah, I look at Steve and I'm reminded of what an awesome hot bear he is. So.
I've not met Steve, but I'd like to. Steve's got he's got a really like cool little playful smile thing going on there, and I think that's a flattering look.
He's very playful. He's like the life of the party type. Let me just say that.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean that in the most social sense of the word.
Love the clarification.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. Well, Steve from Denver, we miss you. We're going to see you at FurFest in Phoenix in just a few weeks. So definitely, if we had a prize to give you for being picked, we would give it to you there. But all you get is our, undying adoration. So hopefully that will be enough.
Oh, and the other thing, Steve can sing like an angel. Like he has an amazing voice. So I know that he has a talent that doesn't come through in the picture, but
we need to get him to record like an audio drop of just like movie bears of the week, so that we can like start this segment off with one of our movie bears of the week singing about movie bears of the week. That'd be perfect, right?
He's an opera singer, guys, so he could do something pretty epic, I'm sure.
Yeah, he's an opera singer and he likes singing musical stuff. From musicals. So
we gotta get on this.
Yeah. All right.
An operatic intro, that would be awesome.
Well, Steve, congratulations on being one of our movie bears of the week. So let's move on to our second movie bear of the week. And Dan, I'm gonna have you do this one, if you don't mind. Yeah. Describe for our listeners who may not be watching on YouTube. I have no idea why, because they're missing all this awesomeness. But guys, say hello to Ben from Gilbert. Dan, what do you see?
Nice. I see a very cute guy that is very shirtless. Nice beard, got the little messed up hair going on, which is always a plus in my book. Kind of washed out in the background with all the light, but it's a pretty cool picture, actually. So
can you embiggen it one more time?
It's embiggened for me. Is it embiggened for you guys?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you're right, Dan. He is shirtless, and we've already got more nipple action in just this little segment than we got in the whole Ghost in the Shell movie. Which is a surprise, actually. I expected to see more in the movie, but I'm seeing more before the movies.
So what you're saying is, and granted this gets to our a little ahead to our review, but if like all of a sudden just like nude bodysuit Ben kind of like materialized behind you, like that wouldn't be a problem for you.
Not at all. Not at all.
No, I'd be good with that. Yeah.
Oh goodness.
I could get in bed with a cyborg that looked like that. Just saying.
Yeah, that's the kind. Well, anyway. Hey, so Ben, good to hear from you. What a great picture too. All that hairy-chested goodness on your screen right now for those of you who are watching. I just realized I covered up the live chat. I haven't been able to see what people are saying. Looks like Austin says hi, Ben.
Austin says hi. Yeah,
so
Austin says hi, Ben.
Definitely. All right. So, Ben, congratulations on being one of our movie bears of the week. Let's move on to our next submission. And Jim, you went.
Yeah,
Dan,
I did.
You went. So, Will,
I went. Mind,
oh man!
If you wouldn't mind this time, and I'd love for you to describe our next movie bear of the week. I promise, guys, this was total random generator, all this sexiness. But guys, say hello to Darren from Trenton.
Wait for it to come up. It always takes me a second for them to come up. Oh, hey, there we go.
Hello.
So yeah, there's always this like delay, like you say, okay, it's gonna come up, and I'm like, any second now, and then bam, hotness just like washes over my face, and as soon as I said it, I realized what that meant. So yeah, let me tell you about Darren, because I want to start by saying, if you are not watching the YouTube or not watching us live or not checking us back in, on our YouTube channel and watching later, you are totally missing out, because this word picture is not going to do him any justice. We've got a very attractive, smooth-skinned, kind of cubbish type guy. Hey, that's a good description, wearing an amazing set of like black and white, like really tight, sheer kind of boxer brief things that leave very little to the imagination. And what is left to the imagination really kickstarts some good thoughts. Yeah. Darren is definitely working everything that he's got here in this picture, and I appreciate the hell out of the submission.
Have we already had Darren? I mean, by had him, I mean like
I don't know, Jim, have you?
I mean by had him. No, we haven't. Okay.
Not as a movie bear of the week. We have shown a picture before that he's sent in while we've been talking.
Oh, that's what it was. That's what it was. That's how we had him.
Different.
I went back and checked because I was like, word generator, name generator, don't play games with me. Like, we've already had Darren in the contest. And then I was like, oh, wait. When I went back and checked, we didn't. So Darren is totally a fair and legal submission. Dan, what do you think about what we're seeing right now? Objectify this young man.
I mean, like Will said, the undies don't leave much to the imagination, but I am perfectly okay with that. It looks great. I like the beard, being a different color than the hair. I've got that going on myself, so it's always a plus when I see that.
Are you from Canada too, Dan?
Close. I'm from Illinois, so it's just as far away from right now as I could be.
Yeah, must be something to that, like geographic location and two-tone beard thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, wait a second. I'm from Michigan, and I don't have the two-tone thing going on.
Yeah, it's not a perfect correlation, but it's
So what Jim's saying is Jim's got a theory. Jim's put this theory out into the world, but what we don't have is enough data to prove or disprove this. So we need plenty more submissions from people all over the United States. If your beard matches, if it doesn't, if you've got no beard, whatever, and then we will carefully put this into like a spreadsheet or something. And I don't know, numbers.
We need to use the
wait a
scientific
second.
theory and all that.
Yeah,
I think if we're going to do full research, guys, we've got to see the hair, the beard, and then the underhair, because you've got to see if like all of them match, don't you?
Oh, see, you're absolutely right. The
That's
more
fair.
data points we have, the more we'll be able to extrapolate from our findings. So yes, I agree. Science.
We've got to be really, really thorough. So please send all of those pictures to Brad at moviebearspodcast.com, Will at Jim at moviebearspodcast.com, and we will get started on this research project.
I promise you, it'll turn into a spreadsheet and not just like something that we drool over.
Yeah, yes, we need more pictures to extrapolate to. Right?
Oh goodness. Wow. Well, hey guys, that brings us to the end of our movie bears of the week. But listen, there was one more photo submission, and I hope he doesn't mind. It didn't get picked by the random name generator, but it was like such a momentous event. I wanted to put it up on screen and show it anyway. So to this gentleman, I'm sorry that the random internetness did not choose you, but guys, it's been a little while since we've seen this super hunky gentleman on the Movie Bears podcast. He is with us tonight in the chat. Guys, say hello to our very own sexy voice in the Movie Bears podcast. We miss him. You love him. Chris Lopez, serving up some hotel relaxing.
Yes, with that new.
Yes.
I remember he's got his like that awesome new tattoo of his. I remember watching kind of his journey getting that, when he went to get that tattoo work done. And I mean, I said it before during this segment, I love some ink, and I love his ink. Some awesome little mouse guard style art on his arm. Plus, thing that has me super excited. I've, despite us being on the show for that long segment where we were hosting before, I've not yet met Chris in person, and that's changing this summer, and I'm super excited about that.
Will, you'll finally get to complete your MBP set.
Yes, I will have the matching set. I'll have the tchotchkes on the wall. I'll mark off the little checkers. I'll have it all taken care of. Yay.
Well, actually, yeah, you. Although we had two other co-hosts once upon a time, they weren't around very long. Do they count for completing the set, or is it just the long-term hosts?
I mean, I think it's sort of like you've got your core set, and then you've got your auxiliary set, and then you have all of the one-time like guest hosts too, and those are part of the set too. So really, I've got a long ways to go to truly complete the set.
Oh goodness. Well, JP in the chat says Chris has got that hot dadness going on, and you are good looking. Wow, that is totally true. And apparently we made Chris blush, you guys. Oh goodness. Well, Chris, great to hear from you. Great to see you even more. We miss you. You should come back for an episode sometime when you're not traveling like crazy and have no time. We'd love to sit down and catch up with you, my handsome friend. In any event, guys, we got 2 movies to discuss.
Mhm.
How do we feel about doing our fucking job and reviewing some movies?
Yeah, we got one job for 2 movies. Let's get on with it.
Bring
We
it.
can't just ogle our listeners the entire show. I mean, we could. I would be
That's a
fine
different
with
show.
doing that.
That's a different show. If somebody wants to start that up, I'd be glad to participate.
Well, there is the Underwear Bears podcast, right? They do they do their show in their
those guys do
undies
that
every week.
Yeah.
And they are super freaking hot. In fact, we have been asked to do a show with them. My only hesitation is A, how do we all get in the same place at the same time? And B, are we ready for underwear only primetime, guys? On a YouTube podcast. What do you
They're
think?
a short drive from here, so next time you're in the area, we could set that up.
We could. We'll be there in September. Maybe
Austin on the chat is asking.
No one's ready.
Austin on the chat is asking, what is this podcast? Not this one we're doing, but what is this underwear one that we're talking about?
So, Dan, you listen to the Underbears podcast, right?
Yeah, I listened to a couple episodes. Yeah.
Couple episodes. Will, do you watch?
I have watched. And yeah, so Underbears podcast is 4 guys who the premise is really simple. It's 4 guys sitting on like a couch or like in a living room type setting, all wearing just their underwear. Sometimes just like boxers, sometimes like kind of nice little briefs. It's just 4 bears in underwear, and they tend to talk about they're much more of like a potpourri topic show. Like our focus is always movie stuff. Sometimes they talk about movies, sometimes they talk about bear things like bear pool party etiquette, or just like what to do when your growler goes off and things like that. So theirs is much more of like a grab bag of like all things kind of whatever interests them.
Yeah, for sure. And I've got their homepage shared up on the screen right now. So Jim, there you go. There you have it. 4 super hot guys in their undies on a couch.
Well, free plug for the Underbears podcast, guys. So we expect the same in return. That's all. Just fair is fair.
Hey, they plugged us several times, so
I'm pretty sure they just did a combo episode with Cubs Out Loud when they were at Jones Fur this weekend. Like they had a couple of the Cubs Out Loud guys go on.
They may have. These podcasts are all very we like to network. We'll put it that way.
I think he was purposely trying to avoid that word.
I was like, how do I say we all like to trade around and have fun? In any event, yes. So please don't leave our broadcast right now. Show, but check them out for sure. In any event, guys, we are going to start with, speaking of nipple action, Jim, you brought it earlier. Yes. We're going to start with Ghost in the Shell. Are we ready for that? Time.
Yep.
All right. Awesome. We can do that. By the way, Steve in the chat said, under hair, Brad? Really? Yes, that is my more public safe term, Steve. Anyway, so guys, we're going to talk about Ghost in the Shell as well as Life a little bit later on, completely spoiler free for about the first 15-20 minutes or so of the discussion, and then we'll give you a fair warning before we go to a brief spoiler section. So if you haven't seen either of these films, fear not, you can still hang out with us, but if you need to step away when we get to spoilers, we totally understand. But all that said, here we go, our discussion of Ghost in the Shell. All right. So, Will, I thought it only fitting, given your extensive background with anime, that you be the one to introduce this movie for us. So give us a little bit of backstory. Tell us, from your thought, spoiler free, is this movie worth checking out? Is it okay compared to the original? Give us some initial thoughtage. What you got?
Absolutely. So I'm going to start with just a quick, big picture overview of this, lifted straight from IMDb because I was trying to come up with the synopsis for it, and I kept dipping kind of close to spoiler territory, and I said, I'll just let IMDb decide for me. So, Ghost in the Shell, 2017. In the near future, Major is the first of her kind, a human saved from a terrible crash, who is cyber-enhanced to be a perfect soldier devoted to stopping the world's most dangerous criminals. So, live-action adaptation of a 1995 anime, which I would say is one of the most important of the modern animes, one of the most iconic, and one of the most impactful. I mean, without the 1995 Ghost in the Shell movie, we wouldn't have the genre of cyberpunk as we have it today. We wouldn't have The Matrix as a film, to give you an idea of like the where this sits in history. That movie, that anime, is one of my favorite animes, and it's one of the ones that I will defend to my death. And I think because of that, I can't help but be a little bit biased. Ultimately, I was a little underwhelmed by this adaptation. I don't share the hatred that has like swept through like film press leading up to this film's release. I think a lot of that is unfair, and I think a lot of that is kind of like just piling on. I think to this adaptation's credit, it does a really, really good job of mimicking a lot of the iconic shots from the anime. There's like the cyborg assembly at the beginning, the typing with the robot fingers. There's a good overhead shot of the slummy part of town, the going invisible. These look really, really good, very visually impressive in their presentation, and they match like what the anime feels like. You know, it's visually, this film's got it going on, but it's the story that suffers for me. The anime has a lot of complexity in the way it tells its story, and a lot of that is stripped down here to its very core elements and sort of reshuffled around for mass appeal. And so I think there's some of that is fine, but I find it ultimately a little frustrating because I want smart science fiction, and I don't think we got smart science fiction here. I think we just got visually impressive, kind of good action science fiction here. It's Scarlett Johansson's okay. She's really good at being beautiful, and she's really good at playing aloof. And that sort of works the character as written on page here. There's not a lot to that character, like not as much as I would like, so I don't fault her for it. I just feel like, you know, pun intended, the character is a bit of an empty shell here. There's also the whitewashing issue, which is the big headline. And is it a problem here? I would say, yeah. I mean, it's okay for a country to reimagine a story based on its aesthetics. Other countries remake American films all the time, but this film did a couple of specific things, which we'll get to, that I felt were a little tone deaf in their execution. Instead, give me someone like from Pacific Rim, Rinko Kikuchi. Put her in this role. Give me a smarter script with like a more emotional and intellectual resonance. And then keep all of these gorgeous visuals, and I'm sold. But we didn't have all of that here. So as it is, this isn't a bad film at all. It's just a frustrating one because I feel like this could have been more than it is. It's not something I'm going to recommend for or against. It sort of like straddles the line of my tastes. So I'm very neutral on this one, and I guess I invite everyone to make up their own minds.
All right. So we got Will stuck in neutral. Dan, what do you think?
I have no background with anime. I think the only anime or manga I've ever watched is like they did an X-Men cartoon back in the day. So that's the only thing that I've ever seen. When I went into this, I was like, this has Scarlett Johansson, the creepy geisha spider girls, and people with robot things, robot enhancements. I was like, this looks really cool. So going into it, I had no idea what it was. I didn't even know what the story was. I thought it was pretty cool as far as the actual movie itself. I thought it pulled from a lot of different movies. There was a little bit of Fifth Element. There was a little bit of Blade Runner. There was a little bit of like, I think it was Running Man back in the day with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Very futuristic kind of stuff. I loved the graphics on it were very cool. As far as like the acting, Scarlett Johansson, I love her, but she was too stiff. It was too, like when she would walk away, her arms wouldn't move. And I don't know why, but that bothered the hell out of me. So that was a little bit weird. And I liked everything else. I thought was very cool. I thought the way that they portrayed him, I have seen little clips of him before, and I thought that he brought in he brought a lot of heaviness to a role that didn't have a lot to do with it. So I thought that was pretty cool. Overall, I think it's for me, it's a recommend. I did see it in 3D, and the 3D was very cool. Just looking at the background of it, it was it added so much depth to it that when I took off the glasses in the middle, it was really weird transition.
All right. So Dan, this is a big recommend from you, it sounds like then.
Yep.
We're getting 2 super sexy thumbs up from Dan. All right. All right. So we've got a neutral, we've got a big thumbs up. Jim, it falls to you as the next in line. Are you aligned with one of the other 2 guys? Are you striking out on your own? What's your thought?
I don't know. I think I might fall somewhere. I think I'm close to Dan. Like Dan and I are kind of like this, or more like this. You know what I mean? If you know what I mean? Like, yeah, like that. That's what we're like. But no, so my history with Ghost in the Shell is I basically have none. My history with Ghost in the Shell started Friday night, which is the night before we saw the movie. I went back, Brad, we put on the 1995 anime movie, and I was fully unimpressed with that movie. I don't know what it was about it. I found it rather cold, detached. Somebody said in the thing that like it's almost extremely to a fault, like philosophical, and it doesn't play into my sensibilities in terms of digesting a movie. There's got to be something emotional that I can grab onto. And if it's too dry, if it's too sciencey, without take a movie like Arrival, right? It had all that dry sciencey stuff with the aliens, but it had that super strong character and emotional hook that like really held me to the movie. I found though that this movie, the 2017 Ghost in the Shell, for me was an improvement over the one I saw the night before. I'm like, wow, okay, I see that they're copying some of the story beats, which I kind of like that. I'm like, ooh, I only seen this movie once the other night, and I remember that shot. That was really cool. There's some low shots looking up at buildings, like you said. There's like the end of a chase scene. Something happens in a chase scene that's lifted right out of the movie. Basically liked it more than the original anime, and I know that's probably a lot of the fans probably don't like to hear that, but I just found the old one to be very, it didn't have an interesting character in it. Even Major as the lead character just wasn't super interesting. She was an android, and she she acted like that. And in this movie, Scarlett Johansson, I think and I'm going to get into my problems with Scarlett Johansson in these type of roles in a minute. I will say I liked kind of the Blade Runner world that they created here. Obviously, it's obvious that the original Ghost in the Shell must have sprung right out of Blade Runner, right? I mean, didn't Blade Runner come first before Ghost in the Shell?
Oh, yeah. For sure. By a lot.
But yeah, so recommend it. I don't know if it's a strong recommend, but I would say it's something you could definitely wait for, home viewing or VOD if you wanted to. But it's a soft recommend for me, only because I was surprised I liked it so much after watching the original that I didn't care for. I thought, to me, this is a bit of an improvement. I like kind of the story depth that they gave it, especially with the main character. I liked a lot of the stuff they added toward the end of it. And Brad and I will talk about that in spoilers. But yeah, it's a thumbs up for me. The 3D was good. It added depth to a lot of the scenes, especially a highly visual movie like this. I think the 3D did add quite a bit to it. The only downfall for that is 3D movies tend to be dark. And this movie, this was a dark world. It was like, Blade Runner-y, underworld-y kind of dark stuff at times. And I just get really tired of watching dark movies all the time. So 3D, take or leave on that. But so soft recommend for me.
All right. Jim, you mentioned you're probably upsetting fans of the original. Austin in the chat says, "The fuck?" question mark to your comment.
If I was wearing pearls, I'd be clutching them.
Oh goodness. All right, so we got a neutral from Will, we got a definite recommend from Dan, we've got a soft recommend from Jim. I guess I'm sandwiched in between Jim and Dan, which is a place I'm happy to be. So I would say I like this better than you did, Jim, and probably not as much as you did, Dan, hence the sandwiching. And there's a few reasons for that. So I did see the original when it came out. I didn't see it in theaters, actually, though. I saw it a couple years later when I was in college, and a friend of mine was like, dude, we should totally, like, drink and order pizza and watch Ghost in the Shell. And I'm like, you had me at pizza, but what the fuck is Ghost in the Shell?
Nice.
We watched it. It was like, I don't know, 3 o'clock in the morning, crazy shit you do on a Saturday night in college. And I loved it. You know, I hadn't seen The Matrix yet at that point, and I'm not a huge fan of The Matrix anyway, so it's not like that's a barometer. But I think that, you know, had I seen The Matrix first, I'd have been like, oh, Ghost in the Shell is trying to rip that off a little bit. So Ghost in the Shell, tip my hat to you. Even though you ripped off Blade Runner like a motherfucker. I thought it was a great movie. You know, I really like the characterization of Major. I think she's a really fascinating character. I like sort of the philosophical quandary of, like, you know, human merging with machine. Like, where does that line sort of start and stop, right? When people lose legs or limbs now, they're getting replaced with, like, robotic implants. The beginnings of them, I guess. We're not talking full-on Luke Skywalker, like animatronic hand or anything yet. But, you know, I could see in the near future where, you know, people are like, who wants human eyes when I can see an X-ray? And boy, would I look around an X-ray sometimes. You know, but like, who wouldn't choose to maybe have their eyes replaced with cybernetics if they got damaged or something? So I think it has something pretty cool to say about just the human condition and the artificial you know, blending of machine and humanity. I would say for this movie, though, because we're really talking about the live action film, and it's hard not to compare them, but I liked it. I liked Scarlett Johansson in this role. I think she's getting some flack for coming off all cold, aloof, and Katnissy. But here's the thing. The character itself is like that. It's not Ghost in the Shell's fault that Scarlett been in her and Lucy playing essentially, you know, robot AI, you know, whatever girls. So, like, you know, I think she's starting to get a little typecasty with some of this stuff. Also, they brought in the hot chick riding a motorcycle thing from the Avengers. Like, okay, I get what you're trying to do, but, like, come on. So, I mean, I really liked her in this role. I thought she did a fine job. Jim, you mentioned some of the stuff that was added on. I didn't see, like, the second unofficial movie. I didn't see the TV series of Ghost in the Shell.
No, neither did I.
Yeah, so I'm told some of the stuff that got added is from those other sources. And I'm really curious. And Sam from Denver, I know you're in the chat too. So if you hear something and we got it wrong, or you want to offer something, Austin, I know you're a big fan too. Feel free to correct us. Feel free to let us know if there's something we don't know about. But I liked some of those elements that they added in there. I think that they worked well. We'll talk more about them in spoilers, but Dan, you mentioned seeing it in 3D. I really enjoyed the 3D as well. In fact, we saw this with a friend who typically doesn't like movies in 3D, like, at all, and he fucking loved it in 3D. So I think it really adds something to it. There's some really neat things they do with just some of the effects. You know, certain things that happen with, like, water or, like, computer code or whatever. There's some inventive ways that they run with that I thought was cool. So I don't want to spend a lot of time repeating you guys, because I feel like you guys have said most of the things I already feel. But I would say, even if you haven't seen the original movie, you don't have to see this film. In fact, I bet if you were to see this movie first and walk out of it kind of wanting more, then the original might even be, like, something that you're like, oh my God, like, that was the piece I needed. So maybe you should watch them both. I don't know. In any event, I've been talking forever. Guys, any other thoughts before we take things to the spoiler zone?
I think it's important to talk sort of about the world of this movie, because I think I get tired of the line like, "Oh, the setting is like a character," because I feel like that's cliche in a lot of things. Like you hear that thrown out all the time. I will say that the setting in this film is very, very important, because when cyberpunk is done right, it is done from a heterotopian perspective. In other words, it's not dystopian, which means the future is bad, or utopian, which means the future is good. Instead, this looks at a future that says man is blending with machine, in all aspects of his life. All of these cultures, like multiculturalism, drawing a lot of like, this film draws a lot from like real life Hong Kong, which was under British control for like 99 years and had like, in our lifetimes, this weird like cultural blending that it had to deal with. That's all part and parcel within this setting. You have new structures being built around old. You've got slums with giant holograms over them. You've got all of this stuff blended together. And this film, at least from a setting perspective, doesn't look at it as future is good or future is bad. This is the inevitable path of the future, and we as human beings have to figure out our place within it. I like this type of story. In either of the presentations, anime, movie, or whatever, I feel like both captured that. I don't think that they captured it as gracefully here. I don't think that the character had as much to do within the world here, and I think that was a problem for me. And for sort of as a counter argument, I would say that because she was less connected to the kind of the philosophy of the film, I felt like she was a more shallow character, and I cared about her less than I did in the original anime. I think that philosophy is part and parcel of why she's so important and why it's interesting.
I think it's interesting, sort of the differences, right, that come about because of the story choices. Will, I know you were getting like a whitewashing comment there under the wire, and we can talk about that, but I think it's getting hard to talk about some of these things without going into spoilers. Also, just being conscious of time. I think now is a great point to go ahead and move us along so that we can more freely chat about these things. So if you've not yet seen Ghost in the Shell, the 2017 version with Scarlett Johansson, and you value your virginal innocence, you may want to step away for 10 or 15 minutes. Come on back for our spoiler-free discussion of Life. But if you continue to listen, you do so at your own peril, because we're about to open up some spoilers. Do people say this his house anymore, or is that like from 2002? Is that over and done?
Wait, what?
His house.
His house.
Oh, in his house, like the izzles, the shizzles, and, like kind of that. Yeah.
For Drizzle.
Yeah, I feel like you can bring it back, Brad. Like if you actually, no, I feel like if we're about to head into this conversation about cultural appropriation, which you kind of like you hit it right before the spoiler. I don't think that us trying to bring back the shizzy and all of that is going to be an effective way to do that.
Probably not. In any event, spoilers are totally fair game. I was just stalling. I was killing time to let people step away if they need to. In any event, so Will, I don't want to spend a ton of time on it because A, it's divisive, and B, we don't have a lot of time. But you made a comment about whitewashing. Tell us more.
So there are a lot of these films that have come out that focus on a certain part of the world, and then you see them remade in America with all American white actors. Sometimes this is taking an actual foreign character, for lack of a better word, and having a white actor play them and use like, for lack of a better word, like, blackface or something like that to play the character. More recently, though, we've just been replacing some of these characters with white characters and kind of stripping away some of the cultural significance. Now, I went into this one a little bit more neutral to the idea of Scarlett Johansson playing the character, because it seems like the world that they're building in this one is a little more racially diverse. And also, she's a cyborg, so the shell can be whatever you want it to be. And I think that's where I went into this film. Like, okay, I'm just going to see it for what it is. But the film, we're in spoilers. We find out towards the end of this film that all along, Scarlett Johansson has actually been secretly an Asian kind of like rebel rouser whose brain was put in and stripped of its identity and turned into Scarlett Johansson. And I think that Whether or not you see that as fitting and appropriate within the movie, you know, and I think you could make an argument for that being a sound enough plot device. This is 2017, and I feel like having your white character secretly be Asian, but not actually have an Asian character playing that at all. I feel like in 2017, that's kind of a tone deaf way to do it. I think that they should have read the writing on the wall for that way before. Give me an actual Asian actress in this role, and I don't think you have to change anything for the story. And I think that you avoid a lot of the tone deaf arguments you have, the whitewashing arguments, and you get to propel maybe someone else into the limelight. So yeah, this was a little more problematic for me once I saw it than I thought it would be going in.
I have one rebuttal to that, and that's secret Asian woman.
Is that who she was? So Austin said something in the chat just now about he feels that Scarlett Johansson doesn't really need another starring role. Well, that's who knows. I don't know. I like to see her in movies, but I like to see her be able to act as a real person, not as a fucking cyborg or as an app on somebody's phone. And he says, but what he really says, the Japanese actress could have been used that opportunity, meaning like a fresh face, you know, I mean, somebody up who, you know, could use that as a springboard. Like we talked about this Beauty and the Beast. We didn't need Emma Watson to be Belle. I mean, that role called for some like a young, like really energetic young woman to be in that role, and they could have used that as a total springboard for some really talented young woman to play that role, and they could have done the same thing here. It's interesting though if you think about this whole cultural what's it called, Will? Cultural
whitewashing? Appropriation.
Appropriation. In the movie, they take this Japanese woman's or young girl's brain, and they put it is more, I guess, Caucasian as we see it, right? It's kind of an interesting thing. It could almost kind of be, if the movie was self-aware, which I don't think it is, it could be an interesting commentary on the whole, you know, cultural appropriation thing that's going on, right? But the movie's not self-aware, so it comes off as you know, just kind of the same old thing again, right?
Can I ask a culturally unaware question? I'm probably going to get myself in trouble, but Jim, what you just said made me think about it.
Yeah.
So why, in the original movie, if Major is an Asian woman, why are the Asian characters a different skin color than Major is?
She is. It's not that she's necessarily an Asian character, not an Asian character. She's an Asian property, and she is very neutrally designed in that. Plus, the other thing to look at is anime itself uses different color palettes for characters. You see a lot of animes, and maybe not this one specifically, but like with green hair and blue hair and pink hair, and a lot of that's done to differentiate the characters because you tend to have similar art designs and stuff like that.
I get that, but like when you look at some of the other characters, like her Asian boss is like very obviously Asian. Like there are characters that are very obviously like they look Asian, whereas she looks very like race neutral. You know what I mean? Like
her name is Motoko Kusanagi. I mean, she's very Asian. I mean, she just, I guess, was designed as a robot more neutrally.
I know white girls with Japanese names because their parents think it's cool. So, like, I don't think the name necessarily. I'm just saying, like, from a standpoint of like design and look, like, can we definitively say in the original movie she wasn't like designed after like an Asian woman look?
I don't read it that way.
It's hard to say because Japanese animators will often de-emphasize Japanese physical characteristics on the way they draw their characters.
Right. Like, I mean, you end up with like even the art style itself with anime, you tend to have a lot of people drawing more towards like the big eye, small mouth type approach, which is not necessarily like especially Asian in design and structure. It's more like that is the tenet of the art style. And you tend to have, especially for kind of lead characters, you tend to have a more bold, recognizable design than kind of the characters that are designed to just be Asian guy running stall or something like that.
So if we're saying that the animators are de-emphasizing certain traits, are we saying it's the movie maker's responsibility to re-emphasize those traits?
My point is, like, it doesn't necessarily matter that she is Asian in this or not. I think it is once you introduce the storyline of her secretly being an Asian person put inside this body. I think I think once you get to that part of the storyline, and especially knowing the criticism that's going to come, knowing that, I mean, it's not, we've been having these arguments, like Gods of Egypt, I believe, came out and all the hubbub happened about that when they were first getting ready to announce the Scarlett Johansson casting. So it's not like this is something that should have taken them by surprise. And I think that when you cast a white character to play a character named Motoko Kusanagi, you have to be ready to accept some of the criticism that comes with that.
So we're getting a comment in the live chat, and this is outside of my knowledge realm, so I don't know. But Sam from Denver says in the original that it's heavily implied that Maitri is designed European. Is there any truth to that?
I haven't gone into I guess the other shows and stuff like that. So just from the movie, I don't know. And again, even if that were just the case in the anime, it doesn't touch on the issue. It doesn't touch on that issue. It doesn't bring it up. And I even went into this movie it's not aware
of what it's of any kind of. I guess it just leaves it unsaid as to her cultural or origin.
And that's the stronger choice, especially
other than the name. There's no reference to culture.
Especially with this like kind of blending of cultures and stuff like that we have in these heterotopian style films.
Yeah.
Like, I think that if you're able to leave a little bit more of it up in the air and just say that, yeah, okay, there's some European influences on this Asian design, whatever, like that makes sense within the world. I think the problem I ran into personally had to do with and I even went into this film without a problem with that. I was totally okay with Scarlett Johansson playing this character because she's an android, whatever. I had a problem with it once we got to the fact that they put, all of the kind of the street thugs, or at least her and her friend, and I forget that character's name off the top of my head. They were both Asian characters that were put in this like beautiful skin, stuff like that, which if they had tied that around and told that story more interestingly about why they did that, I could have been brought back on board if there was a deeper message about it. But instead, it felt almost to me more like they were just kind of like, oh shit, people are going to be upset that she's not Asian, so let's just sort of make her secretly Asian. I felt like it was a cop-out that didn't work well.
Gotcha.
I came into it not knowing anything about the movie and not realizing, like, even not knowing the whitewash stuff. So I was, when they kind of released that fact that she was the Asian girl, I was like, what? It took me a couple minutes to kind of figure out what was going on, that the woman in the apartment was her mom and all that stuff. I was like, okay, now this makes a little bit more sense. And then they started showing the other people that were on the beds and stuff. I was like, okay, so now it's more of instead of like saving people and then trying to save their brains, it's more they're turning them into these projects or these experiments.
And that's a good point. Definitely. We've used all of our spoiler time for the whitewashing discussion. So we either jettison life or we do a really short life review, but I feel like we need
to do a short life review.
Okay.
A short life.
So Jim, you were talking about some of the add-on stuff, and Dan, you were kind of just commenting, I think, about one of the things you wanted to talk about, Jim. Was that the mom stuff that Dan was referencing?
Yeah, I actually, that was part, the whitewashing stuff aside, because we just like turned that inside out. But that aside, I really did like the character depth and story depth that piece that they added on. You know, I thought it worked for this movie and this character, right? I mean, otherwise you have something that's very, for lack of a better term, like robotic and devoid of emotion. And great, and that's great for philosophical and sci-fi and, you know, all that stuff. But I tend to gravitate towards movies that have a decently told, you know, emotional hook. And this movie did that for me. Moments between her and the mom, kind of, you know, toward the end and at the end. And it was cool to see this giant, like, stadium graveyard thing. I thought that was cool. That was very, that was very, very Japanese, you know.
Except for the names of the gravestones written in English was not very Japanese.
That's true.
Right.
That's true. Yeah.
I think that we can all get behind, can't we?
Sorry, Hollywood audiences cannot go for subtitles. We know this.
Oh boy. All right. So yeah, I mean, definitely I think those things added some depth to the character as well, Jim. I love the original movie, but I like sort of this added on element of her, like, you know, her brain being ripped from her body against her will. She goes back, she's trying to sort of reconnect with her old life. I mean, that in itself feels like some other movies. But I think here it makes me care a little more about the character than I did in the original film. I think in the original film, I cared more about her partner dude with the robotic eyes. And in this movie, it was reversed to me. I cared more about her than him, even though he was nice to look at before the eye transplant. So, you know, there's that. Guys, what else from a spoilers perspective do we need to get off our chests or discuss?
Christopher mentioned one thing. Christopher in chat mentioned, are we going to talk about her not deciding to be uploaded to the net? That to me was a huge differentiating point of the movie. And I will let others talk about that because I have nothing to differentiate. I mean, it wasn't a strong point in the original movie. So for me,
well, part of it's the plot lines are sort of diverge. Like the first part of the movies feel very similar, but the plots diverge in very different places. So I feel like they had to make different decisions because they were dramatically different movies at that point. You know, we didn't have the puppet master doing the exact same things that he did the first time. You know, all of that stuff. I think one of the things that, and I think this is also part of where I kind of came down on the negative on this movie too. I feel like the adaptation that we got here presented itself much more as like a superhero origin story. What we ended up with is we found out how she got to be who she is, and by the end of it, she was stronger and better for it, and gets to do superhero pose at the edge of a building as she overlooks the city she's now protecting.
Yeah,
that's what we got here. Whereas in the anime, like the changes, like I'm not even going to go into it because I think people should watch it, and it's very spoilery to talk about that. But it goes into a much more like her struggle is an internal one, not an external one. Like she's not even the fight versus the giant tank. It's less about her fighting the tank as in the anime than her friend coming in and doing stuff. Like she wasn't as big the fighter as she is in this one. So yeah, I think, and you have to look at that also as like, this is 2017. You know, we live in the age of like the superhero movie. We live in the age of, even as much as that, Resident Evil, which I think owes its roots to Ghost in the Shell. I think this movie owes its treatment of its female protagonist to Mia Jovovich in Resident Evil. I think it borrows from all of those different things. So I think maybe in 2017 you have to make it a superhero movie. I don't know, but I feel like ultimately it lost some of the importance. It lost some of like the integrity that the original had. To Chris's point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what Chris was saying. There's a lot of discussion going on in the chat here, and which is like awesome.
Walls of text that I haven't even read. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, it's like and I apologize. We can't probably dive in as deep as some might like us to on this movie. We could probably have a two episode discussion on this movie and the points. But and that just goes to show. I mean, to me, this franchise seems to resonate deep with a lot of people. And so yeah, I was going to say one thing, that Juliette Binoche was in this movie as the doctor, right? And I thought she probably had the best of anybody. And in terms of, she really got across that, like, especially toward the end of the story, her inner conflict about what she was doing versus what they were kind of trying to do. And I thought she was really, I love her and everything. And I thought she was really a really good addition, I thought, to this movie. I don't know character wise what you guys think of it, but I thought her performance was good.
Was that the doctor that she was like pretending like looked at as their mother? Yeah. I liked her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought she was fantastic as well. You know, it was a little obvious what was going to happen with her character, though. I'm kind of like, okay, here's the sympathetic doctor who's going to turn her back, you know, on her at first, and then turn her back on the company, and blah 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 blah. But I did like her character. I liked the performance quite a bit as well. She was sort of the springboard, right, for Scarlett Johansson as Cyborg, like getting parts of her memory and revisiting her old home and all that stuff. So, you know, is she like the MacGuffin of this movie, guys?
I mean, she's definitely a trope. The character is definitely a trope. But again, that was another piece I thought it added an emotional dimension to this movie that was missing for me in the original, and I liked it. I liked that relationship that they had, and some of the things that came out toward the end of the movie, even though they were, right, Brad, very predictable.
And to the film's credit, casting Juliette Binoche and Takeshi Kitano, those two people class up the joint quite a bit. So I was really happy anytime they were on screen. I felt like they kind of elevated the movie, and that's what a good actor can do. That's what like a really good actor can do.
Indeed. We've got some crazy chat going on right now. People are saying we should be talking about Boss Baby instead of this movie, apparently. To which my answer was a resounding no. We're not doing it. Sorry. In any event. Well, guys, we've got another movie to discuss, and we've only got about 15 minutes to do it. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to move us along. We're going to put this ghost back in her shell, and maybe someday we'll revisit. But all that said, we're going to go ahead, switch gears, and talk about Life, the new sci-fi. Is it a thriller? Is it a suspense movie? Horror movie? I don't know what to call it. I'm sure we'll break it down. We're going to talk about it spoiler free, probably 5 minutes or so. Then we'll go into spoilers. So hang out with us if you haven't seen it, if you want. If you got to step away, totally understand. But that said, here we go. Our discussion of all right. So Jim, I know this was a film you were really excited about. So maybe you can give us a very, very brief sort of setup of the film and your initial impressions.
Yeah, I got really excited about it about the time the first trailer came out. And then I think there was another trailer that came out a little later, and that made me less excited for the movie. And which is unfortunate because I like these rounded stories and movies. So anyway, I'm going to give the synopsis of this one. This is really a sci-fi / thriller, I will say. It's kind of where it fits for me. Here it goes, and I got this off of Google or something. I did not write this. Astronauts aboard the International Space Station are on the cutting edge of one of the most important discoveries in human history, the first evidence of extraterrestrial life on Mars. As members of the crew conduct their I've totally fucked that up, haven't I? As members of the crew conduct their search. Wow, I can't even read sentences. As members of the crew conduct their research, the rapidly evolving life form proves far more intelligent and terrifying than anyone could have imagined. So here we have this movie directed by Daniel Espinosa, starring Jake Gyllenhaal, Rebecca Ferguson, Ryan Reynolds, Hiroyuki Sanada, same guy from Sunshine. If you guys remember Sunshine?
Yes, definitely.
Love that movie.
This movie, like I said, it's a sci-fi thriller. I think it's a pretty solid entrance in that. Now, it doesn't really offer anything new. And I think one of our commenters, JP, said it earlier. He said, basically, this is, I forget what he said. It's basically a competent movie. Doesn't really offer anything new. This one does remind me of a couple of different movies strongly. One is Gravity. But again, it's not as visually captivating as Gravity, but I think it has some of those elements and wants to capture that feeling. It reminds me a lot of Alien, but not quite as terrifying as Alien. So I think it tries to put a lot of elements in, and those are great movies, by the way. Those are all fantastic, classic movies. But this one does not reach that level. But I still thought it was pretty solid. The performances were all good. You didn't Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool in space.
In space.
Sucked because that says, okay, man, I would like to see some range out of you, dude, but I guess we're not going to get it in this movie. But in spite of new, I think it's a pretty solid sci-fi thriller movie. I'd recommend seeing this one, but again, not one that you have to rush out and see in theaters. It was very competently shot. Some of the effects they did I thought were really good. But again, I think this one's going to pass pretty quickly in theaters, and probably one that most people are going to catch on VOD. And so it's a recommend for me.
So Jim, I think what you're saying is if Gravity and Alien had a butt baby, life would be it.
That it would definitely be it. Yeah. Uh-huh.
There you go. Well, Austin
except I don't think you're going to see this one turn into a multi-movie franchise.
Probably not. All right, guys, the clock is ticking. Dan, what are your thoughts? Is this worth checking out? What do you think?
I think I'm pretty much with Jim. I think if you're going to check it out and maybe wait until it's on demand, not necessarily something that I would rush out to the theater again to see. To me, like when I looked at the description, it said horror. And when I think of like a space horror movie, I think of Aliens and I think of Event Horizon, because those two movies were terrifying. And this did not do it for me. The casting was very cool, having such a small cast for the whole movie and watching them kind of dwindle down. I liked that. I liked that aspect of the Jake Gyllenhaal's character. I liked him. Jim was right. It's Deadpool in space with Ryan Reynolds. And the rest of the other 3 or 4 are all, pretty much cookie cutter for this kind of a movie. To me, like I said, I agree with Jim. If you're going to see it, maybe wait for on demand. It's worth checking out if you don't have anything else to do. But yeah, soft recommend.
All right, so soft recommend. Let's see. What would I say, guys? If Gravity and Alien got together and made a butt baby that was parented by life. See this movie on. Yeah. I mean it's like a light version of either movie, and I don't feel like it does either movie super well, to be honest. I mean, I don't know. I was engaged. I was interested to see what happened. But in the back of my head, I'm thinking, man, I saw 17 minutes of Alien Covenant at South by Southwest a couple weeks ago, and that was so much better than this. And I just watched the whole movie. How does that work? And so I don't know. That sounds elitist. I don't mean it to. But I think when you've got a movie like this that so obviously pulls from that film, I almost think you've got to go out of your way to make some departures, right? To do some things differently. And I swear to goodness gracious, I felt like there was some like beat for beat, like redos of some Alien scenes in this movie and some Gravity scenes in this movie. And we won't probably talk a lot in spoilers, but I would just say, to sum things up a little bit, it might be worth a rent on Redbox, or if you're already paying for a Netbox, Netflix or Hulu subscription or something, go for it. But I wouldn't recommend like buying this film, or paying to see it in the movie theater necessarily. So Austin's saying our opinions will influence whether he sees this movie. No pressure. He says he may check it out because he likes sci-fi. But he also said, Jim, that your opinion talked him out of it, I think, earlier. So I don't know. Maybe he's going back and forth a little bit. So this one for me, I guess, is the third soft recommend in a row. So Will, it now falls to you. Are you breaking up the pattern? What do you think?
I am breaking up the pattern. So if this is the love child of Alien and Gravity, then those two are never allowed to procreate again, because their spawn is not interesting. The problem with Life as a movie is that for me, it's sort of a nothing movie. Like when I think about movies that I saw this year, when I think about interesting science fiction movies I've seen this year, hell, even Ghost in the Shell, which I liked Ghost in the Shell more than I liked Life. So after all you heard me say about that before, like I liked Life less. I would say it's a soft rejection for me. I didn't hate it. There were a couple of things that it did really well. The monster design is super cool. The monster design is really, really good. But I have to ask,
Aren't you upset that they whitewashed the alien?
Brad. The monster design in this was really, really good. Really super effective as for what it was. And they do something which we'll talk about in spoilers maybe at the end that I liked. Everything else I disliked. I disliked this cast. Ryan Reynolds was sort of a nothing character here. Jake Gyllenhaal and Rebecca Ferguson, people who I have a lot of respect for. I've said on this show several times, give me a Jake Gyllenhaal movie any day of the week. He just looked lost up there. They all just looked lost up there, not because their characters were, but because I felt like they didn't have anything to do interesting within the script. I didn't hate this by any means. It was fine. It was fine enough, but I wouldn't recommend anyone go spend money on this. I think there are way better movies to go see instead. Rewatch Alien. Rewatch Aliens. Maybe even rewatch Alien 3 over this. I don't know. Yeah, this to me was lightly bad. I just can't. I can't recommend. I don't want my words at all to make anyone spend money on this. Like that's, I guess, where I'm at.
So Austin had said, "Will you decide for him?" Now he says perhaps it's going to be a rent. But if you're telling him not to spend money, Austin, I don't know, man. Are you going to do what Will says? Or are you going to do what your heart tells you? Only you can make that decision.
Renting is fine. It's like, but not in theaters. Not in theaters. I don't feel like the big screen brought. I mean, do you guys feel like there was anything visually interesting enough in this that it warranted the ticket, or is this is this a Netflixer? Is this a rental?
I mean, it's not like, oh my God, wow, but there were some moments in this movie I thought were really well done. I thought we'll get into them in spoilers, but I thought I thought there were moments of terror in this movie that worked for me. Like I kind of put myself in the situation that the crew was in and wondering what I'm going to do, like to keep safe or make everybody else safe or what. I mean, those things I thought were interesting. And I thought the movie handled those mostly pretty smartly. I thought the choices that were made in the movie by the characters were fairly smart. They're not there's a monster in the cellar. I think I'll go down there with a flashlight and see what's down there. You know what I mean? I thought they were made pretty smart choices. I thought the script, in that it was derivative of everything else, was still made some smart choices with the material. So that kind of worked for me. Overall, again, if it didn't have that, I'd be in your camp, Will.
All right. Well, we're going to briefly talk spoilers. Hey, I want to clarify something real quick. My whitewashing the alien comment was just because the alien was colored black in the original and it's colored white in this movie. And they both have a scary mouth is what I meant. So your reaction made me worried. So I wanted to clarify my joke.
I was just going to say, we're not going to touch that. We're going to move back to talking about Alien was at least well designed. He was cool. It was a neat design. I wanted this alien in another movie, right?
Yeah. I mean, I like the design of this alien. In fact, in some ways I found it a little more scary than like the xenomorph version, because it's like in space, like coming after you, like.
Right, and it seems super intelligent, which to me was kind of like half of the terror. Was like, this thing's so fucking intelligent that it's like half a step ahead of the crew the whole time, which I thought was great.
Yeah, I think that does. While that's a great element, I think it's also something that hurt the movie a little bit for me, because this movie felt like. It felt like this particular alien, there was a certain point in this movie where I feel like I just kind of felt like, well, how do you even beat this thing? It's so like, it was like a ridiculously overpowered compared to the skill set and equipment set of this particular crew. At least with the first Alien, which was a badass monster, which wrecked that crew. They had more interesting tech that they could deal with, and you had a more kind of like badass hero in Ripley as she sort of evolved. So the showdowns were more interesting here. It was sort of like, it was like, I don't know, like pitting a bear against a bunch of like school children, like
Boy Scouts.
It's like, it's like, I see where this is going, so let's count through the minutes.
Right, easy pickings.
Although that said, I would gladly pit myself against a bear.
And you have in the past. In any event, hey, so guys, I know I'm like pushing the time thing, but I've literally been in my office 15 hours today, so I'm like, no offense, I need to leave this fucking room. But what do you think? Do we need to do spoilers on Life, or are we kind of good? I mean, do we want to crack that open for 5-10 minutes?
I don't need to. I mean, really, the only point that I was going to make isn't a spoiler. It's that I one thing I liked was the stuff they do at the end. But I don't need to say what that is. I can say that, leave that on the table, and that'd be fine.
Dan, what about you? Any need? And it's okay if the answer is yes. But was there anything you wanted to unpack in spoilers?
The only thing I would say is that I was with the movie until about halfway through, and then it took a point. Wait, no spoilers are needed for that. It's you can kind of tell what happens in the movie. So there was a certain point in the movie where I was just like, okay, now it's just like every horror movie that you've ever seen.
Yeah.
So you're running from the monster now.
Exactly. Jim, how about you?
Yeah, I'm fine. I don't think we need to talk about the end. The ending, we'll just leave that for people to discover. Whether people liked the ending or thought it was predictable or thought it was pat, whatever. Say that the ending was pseudo interesting, although again, nothing really new in the ending.
I like that you use the word pseudo, Jim, because the alien had pseudopods.
Did it have pseudopods?
Nice. Yeah, isn't that what you call like tentacle things that reach out and they're prehensile?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's sort of borrowed from the whole pseudopod thing, but also kind of built on this whole like growing its own muscle tissue and neural tissue in interesting ways. Like again, it borrows very heavily from real science while also adding some of the fiction from the science fiction in it in kind of a compelling way.
Indeed. Hey guys, so friend of the show posted a picture for next week's running, very sexy picture of him without a shirt, and I think one of his relatives or someone just saw it because she replied with "I'm blind" and like 50 exclamation points.
Oh, nice.
So
posted it on Facebook?
Well, he posted it on our Movie Bears podcast wall. And so, because it's a public page, you know how Facebook works. You post anything on a public page and it alerts every fucking buddy. But you post one damn post for a small audience and like 4 people see it. So,
right.
How does that work? I don't know. In any event, sorry, listener, I won't mention your name just in case, it's embarrassing. But if you decide to take the picture down, we won't be offended. No worries. I saved a copy of it, so we're good. Anyway. Well, guys, we're just going to go ahead and put a fork in Life then. That's over. That's done. Dan, if any of our listeners want to get in touch with you, where can they find you? How can they interact?
I am on Facebook, named Dan McCord. Shocking. And Twitter, DMcCord82, and Growler, Dan. So wherever, hit me up whenever.
Just search for Dan on Growler.
Right.
Dan McCord
you might find the one. Right.
There you go. Well, we'll look for you on one of those mediums for sure, Dan. And listeners, Jim, if you could put the full name in the chat for our listeners, just in case they need it or want it, that'd be great.
Oh,
go ahead, Jim.
Nothing. Doing it.
Awesome. I was just going to say, so when you're done with that, will you give us your Twitter handle? How can people find you, babe?
Oh, my Twitter is at JJP Out West. All one word. JJP OUTWEST. JJP Out West.
Are you turning into a cheerleader? Yes. JJP.
Go. Alvin.
Oh goodness. All right, Mr. Will, you're up. Where can people find you?
Yeah, look for me on Facebook, William Lindis, on Letterboxd, William Lindis there as well, and on Twitter at Whatever Cove, COVE.
All right. And you can find me on Facebook under Brad Harris. But here's the problem. I have my privacy settings so that only friends of friends can request me. That's how I solved my pesky, like, sexy female bot problem. So you have to be friends with another sexy bear I already know, or you can't add me. But I think you can still message me. So message me and we'll talk. Or find me on Twitter. It's probably easier at iBradPro, all one word. Dan, want to give you a big virtual bear hug. Thank you so much for joining us this week. It was super fun.
Anytime. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh,
We will
it's so
have you
good hanging out with you
anytime,
tonight.
Dan. Oh, goodness. All right, everyone. Well, we will catch you all next week. I leave you with one bit of trivia, guys. Our episode number tonight is also the name of one of my all-time favorite TV shows. Did anybody ever watch 227?
Mm-mm.
I'm guessing no. Okay. What's wrong with you people?
I watched Room 222.
No, that's not the same thing.
That's a really old one, though.
I watched the
Nobody
Band of
listening
23.
probably knows.
In 10 episodes, we'll have a Kubrick reference. So,
That's true. It's true. All right. And one last goodbye to everybody in the chat. Austin, JP, Emilio, Chris, Steve, the other Steve that came in, Sam. We'll see you all next time. Goodbye, everyone.
Some
Bye.
comments, the ones that aren't
Bye-bye.